Tipp today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Good morning, welcome along to Tipp today, 1800 938 007. That's our free phone number. It won't cost you if you'd like to make a call to us. And Leanne is producing as ever. Coming up on the show this morning, we'll be getting reaction to yesterday's interview with the Tánaiste Simon Harris. We'll also be discussing the challenges around endometriosis diagnosis. Agricultural contractor Robert O'Shea will be joining us to share his insights into the difficulties of being in that business at the moment. After 10, we'll be speaking with Deputy Seamus Healy. The Showband Story continues on with Shay Fife from Lucky Numbers, who will be live with me in studio. Remember Lucky Numbers from all those years ago. Plus our agony aunt Phil will be answering your email. So all of that and much, much more on the way. You can text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. You can email tiptoday@tippfm.com. Let's have a look at the front pages of some of your newspapers today. The Irish Independent and the main story there. Garda has been given a 2-year road ban for dangerous driving after trying to chase 2 scrambler bikes. Garda Sean Shields told a judge he was trying to tackle the scourge of the recklessly driven vehicles. To the Irish Daily Mail, and the lead story on the Mail today, RTE journalists are in open revolt, seemingly against their bosses after they overwhelmingly rejected the strategy to reform the caster. If we go to the Irish Examiner, the lead story on the Examiner today, the current energy crisis is worse than the last 3 oil and gas crises combined and is worsening by the day, according to Tánaiste Simon Harris, who spoke to us on this very programme yesterday. Also on the Examiner today, vulnerable patients such as autistic children are regularly being left in pain due to the limited access to special needs dentists, the Irish Society for Disability and Oral Health president has said. And finally, we have a look at the Irish Times. And by the way, right across the newspapers today, there's images of the Terminator actor himself, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was awarded an honorary degree by the University of Ulster yesterday at a ceremony 60 years after his first visit to the city as a champion bodybuilder. Seemingly, I presume he said, "I'll be back." At the end of his speech. Also on the Times today, the limited amount of oil, gas and fertiliser making its way out of the Gulf due to the war in the Middle East will lead to higher prices and slower growth worldwide, the International Monetary Fund has warned. And also reading on the Times today that a 49-year-old man has been charged with the murder of Dennis Donaldson at a sitting of the Special Criminal Court. Donaldson, of course, a former member of the Provisional IRA and senior Sinn Féin official, was exposed as an MI5 informant months after he was shot dead in Donegal way back in 2006. That's a look at what's making headlines today. If you'd like to make comment on any of that, once again, you can text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. Now, on yesterday's show, we were joined by the Tánaiste Minister for Finance, Simon Harris, former GRA representative for Tipperary and retired Garda. Tom Finnan was in touch to highlight some of the issues he's currently seeing, particularly the decline in Garda recruitment, and he joins me online now. Good morning to you, Tom.
Morning, Fran.
Good to talk to you today. In your correspondence with us, Tom, you were very scathing about the current state of the force. Before we talk about what Simon Harris had to say yesterday, will you just outline some of those issues for us?
Well, Fran, I suppose it goes back to the Operation Police and Model where Tipp and Clare are joined, and it's of no benefit to Tipperary. Tipperary is left behind. The Chief Superintendent is now in Clare. The Operation Police and Model nationally is not working. That's a given. We in the GRA, when we heard this was coming into play, went to England and went to constabularies over there and reviewed what the Operation Police and Model was like in England, and they were coming out of it, friend. They were breaking it up because it didn't work. But still, we had a man who came in 2018 and high and mighty with his Operation Policing model and drove it down our throats. But
This
it's
is
not working.
Drew Harris, of course, yeah.
Yeah, Drew Harris, he became commissioner in 2018 after Donald O'Coolan. He's there since from 18 to 25 September last, where Justin Kelly came in. Justin Kelly's fighting a losing battle, he has to make his mind up or try and fight with the government or get across to the government that the Operation Policing model isn't working. And I hope he does. I hope he has success, because it's not working in Tipperary, and because the members aren't out and about. As I said in the correspondence, there's no local knowledge anymore. You know, like the locals don't know their guard, and that's damning, in my view. Because like when I was growing up and you were growing up, every guard was known in the town.
For sure, yeah.
And I think we need to get back to basics. We need to get back to the community. We need to get out there and not worry about computer screens, where this job might not be done or that job might not be done. And like, we're the only, Garda Síochána is the only organisation where members can be fined from their wages for a breach of discipline. I
didn't realise that, Tom. So you can be fined financially for a breach of discipline.
Oh yeah. It's taken out of your wages, friend.
And how is that determined? How is that adjudicated?
Superintendent will investigate the complaint from the public, the member of the public, and he or she will make her determination on the member and their actions.
I'm sure a lot of people would be very surprised at that. I had never heard about that, Tom.
Yeah, there's lots of things that are kind of kept under the carpet, friend. But let's talk about all these things that, like, guards are human. At the last conference I was at, a delegate from Galway, sorry, not the last conference that Drew Harris attended, a delegate from Galway stood up and asked him, the last question was, Commissioner, what's wrong with a member of an Garda Síochána standing up and saying, I'm sorry? And he didn't answer.
And what do you read into that now? What?
Brian, like, we have a disciplinary process on Garda Síochána that's antiquated. It's not modern. Anyone can put out a phone now and photograph or video a guard doing their duty. That's wrong. Unless the guard has a body cam, which are on the way, thank God, to back up what he or she did in the line of their duty. These keyboard warriors with their videos up on social media will be always listening to and always seeing first.
Yeah, I don't want to be critical of the courts, but I mean, if you take the front page of the Indo today, a Garda has been given a 2-year road ban for dangerous driving because he was trying to chase 2 scrambler bikes. This is Sean Shields, the guy. He told the judge he was trying to tackle the scourge of recklessly driven vehicles, but he's the guy who ended up paying a price for that. Is this the kind of thing that plays into, I don't know, I suppose the apathy?
People not doing their job properly, friend.
Yeah.
It's like one of the last incidents I had was a chase around Dundrum Villa in a Carty. Eventually, I apprehended the culprit, brought him to court. But like, there was people out walking that morning. It was a Sunday morning at 12 o'clock in the day. There was people walking the roads. I had to pull back. It was lucky that I spotted who the driver was, that I could go and apprehend him afterwards. But you just don't do these things anymore, friend, because there's too much on your shoulders.
You also spoke to me about resignations, and you said any member who can retire now will, straight away.
That's correct. That's happening. All you have to do is look at or someone show you the bulletins of retirement and transfers and recruitment, and you'll see the amount of resignations, resignees on a monthly basis that the bulletins come out. I think they come out on a monthly basis. They're all, anyone that can leave is leaving. Another story, friend. There was an incident out the road from me here 2 weeks ago, and a member of the public rang me to know that I have CCTV footage on my house. They wanted to apprehend a number of a car that hit their partner's car. So I rang a neighbour who I thought I rang, but I rang a guard above in Kildare who was the same name as the neighbour, and he told me his young fella was in the job 15 months and he was packing it in. And he was the third generation guard, his father and his grandfather, and he was packing it in after 15 months. So that's the way the job has gone. There's no... look, I don't know. It's frustrating that these things are happening. They shouldn't be happening, because the guard job is a great job. It was a great job when I was in it, and I done the job to the best of my ability. I enjoyed working in it, and the public came first.
And what about Simon Harris's response then when I put some of your issues to him? And sadly, I didn't have time to put them all to him because we were trying to get through about 6 or 7 things in the space of 15 minutes yesterday. And it was very frustrating, I must say. But he spoke about the significant increase in the numbers of Gardaí entering training in Templemore, for example. He spoke about changing the law to increase sentencing available to the courts of anybody assaults Gardaí, and he spoke about rolling out the body cams. Did you take anything from what he said yesterday as being, I don't know, helpful or hopeful?
Well, the body cams will be definitely hopeful and definitely beneficial to a member of an Garda Síochána, and of course their duty to back them up, to back up their actions. Whether it is good or bad, friend, their actions are being recorded on their body, not by someone outside.
Yes.
Who takes a snapshot. You know, an incident could take 10, 15 minutes, friend, but if it's up on social media, it's only up for about a minute or two, you know. So, look, that will be a benefit. Recruitment isn't as strong as he says it was. They're not getting the numbers. And when they do get the numbers, then they're not staying. Like, there's people going in for a week or two and they're leaving Templemore.
Yeah, and
that never happened before, Frank.
We also heard today on national radio Sergeant Carol O'Leary from Care speak about the vetting process as well, and her concerns around that. In other words, trainee Gardaí can end up in Garda stations with access to pulse and access to other sensitive information, but not be vetted properly. Is that something that concerns Gardaí?
Without a doubt, because like anyone going for a job nowadays has to be vetted. Are they suitable for the job? Like that should be taking place before anyone enters the gates of Templemore.
Yeah, I mean that really is a no-brainer to me. I can't understand, particularly in a job that deals with people and deals with very sensitive information, Tom.
Correct, friend. That's it in a nutshell. Anyone that wants to join on Garda Síochána should be as clean as a whistle. And if they're not clean, why let them in then, unless you want to get people into the job, just for numbers?
You also felt that the Limerick investigation into Gardaí was, you described it as a witch hunt on members of the force, Tom.
That's what it was, Fran. I was there the first day it happened in October 2019 when the members' phones were seized. They were seized not for the investigation that it was for, but they found stuff on it that led to the superintendent being brought before the courts and members around that investigation brought before the courts that they thankfully were found not guilty. And then you had 3 members of the Roads Policing Unit whose prosecutions were null and void there last week. Like, these members are going through that for the last 7 years, man. There's 130 members in total in the investigation into fixed charge penalty notices, some in Tipperary. I know of one member whose mother was interviewed in her 76th year by not nice members of NBCI. and the family solicitor was with that member's mother, and only for the solicitor was on the ball. They had no evidence to prove that that lady had got the fixed charge notice in the post. They had no postage certificate from on post to say that.
So all of this, Tom, then it plays into the difficult, the morale issues, I suppose, within the force.
Yeah, and you asked Alan Kelly yesterday about Drew Harris, and should there be a review of Drew Harris's tenure?
Yeah,
I think there should be. I think there should be a review into the investigation into NBCI in Limerick of all strands of it, and who was running it, who was leading it, who was the main players that made the decisions to prosecute these members for doing their job.
Now we have the members, because their reputations were tarnished, they are now suing the state. So this is going to prove to be very, very costly, as well as everything else.
On top of the court case of 8 or 10 weeks, whatever it was, Fran, it's going to be astronomical. And these members need to be reimbursed for the pain and suffering that they're after encountering in their daily lives there for the last 7 years. And it's not good enough, friend, that like Drew Harris has gone off into the sunset now. His accommodation paid for up in Phoenix Park. Like, if any girl comes out of Templemore and he goes to Dublin and he's from the country, is his accommodation paid for while he's going serving above in Dublin at the cost of living at the moment? It's I don't know who's making these decisions, but it's just convenient that Garda Síochána's decline is, in my view, surrounding the Fine Gael governments from 2011 to 2025.
All right, Tom.
They've made bad decisions. They've made very bad decisions. The Fine Gael ministers, from Alan Shatter, Francis Fitzgerald, Charlie Flanagan, Helen McEntee, they all made horrendous decisions, Frank.
All right, Tom, I must leave it there, but I'm sure it's a conversation that will trundle on. Thank you for your time, Tom, and thanks for your correspondence with us as well. Good morning to you. Yeah, thank you. That's Tom Finnan there, former Garda, former representative of the GRA in Tipperary as well. 1800 938 007. The text and WhatsApp is 083 311 3311. Now, Irish women are facing up to a decade-long wait for an endometriosis diagnosis, leaving many in prolonged and often debilitating pain. But a new investigation by Irish country living journalist Rosalind Skillen reveals the real human cost behind these delays. And she joins me now. Rosalind, good morning to you.
Good morning, Fran. Thank you for having me on.
You're very welcome, and good to talk to you today. Just for clarity, would you just tell us about the condition? How do you describe the condition, Rosalind?
Yeah, it's got a long and complicated name, and it is kind of a complex condition, but it affects 1 in 10 women, and it's as common as diabetes in women, which you wouldn't think, because there has been a historic lack of awareness of endometriosis in Ireland, and also, as you say, timely diagnosis remains a challenge. But endometriosis is basically a chronic condition where the tissue, which is similar to the lining of the womb, called the endometrium, goes outside the uterus. And this tissue is most commonly found in the pelvis, the ovaries, the surface of the womb, and in some cases it can affect other organs like the bladder or bowel in really severe cases of endometriosis. And during the menstrual cycle, this tissue behaves similarly to the endometrial lining, so it swells at certain times, releases fluid at others, and this is what causes pain and inflammation. And when you're thinking about the symptoms of endometriosis, if one of your listeners is thinking about the symptoms, it varies greatly, but the most common symptom is basically pain, severe pelvic pain, heavy periods, pain during sex, and also problems with bladder and bowel function. So I suppose that's something for your listeners to be aware of, because society has kind of normalised period pain, and that's one of the reasons why it takes so long to diagnose this condition. As you said, like 8 to 10 years wait from the onset of symptoms to diagnosis. Period pain is not normal, so if that's something affecting your listeners, they should know to investigate it further.
Is there a cause that we know of, Rosalind? Is there a genetic element to it?
So endometriosis is really under-researched. That's something that there isn't a clear answer for. And that's kind of one of the issues. And I feel like, Fran, this tells a story kind of like medical research more broadly, and what has been given attention, what has been given funding, which groups have been left behind. So in my article that you mentioned, like, I lead with the fact that there are more research studies on male pattern baldness than there have been on endometriosis.
That's incredible.
That kind of tells you, like, the lack of attention that this condition has received, and questions like that we actually can't answer them just because there has been like a lack of research. So if there are any like PhD students or any researchers, like, it feels like this is, you know, an area which is ripe for medical research and for more attention. Because, there is just a general kind of lack of knowledge and expertise in the condition.
We heard about the huge weight that women have to go through to have this dealt with in some way. But how is it dealt with? I mean, are we talking about operations here? Is there consultancy around the country with expertise in this?
Yeah, it really depends. I suppose, like, it depends on the severity of the case. Like, to really tell, like, most people are getting MRIs or surgery to get the endometriosis removed, really. So the tissue removed. So, like, the more severe cases, women are ending up like going for surgery, getting opened up, and that can be excision surgery, where the where it's literally cut out, or ablation as well. But the excision surgery it tends to be the most effective. That's what women really want. But I suppose what we're seeing in Ireland is a lot of women are going abroad for surgery because there just seems to be a real lack of expertise in Ireland. When I spoke to the HSE about this, they said that it was because of the demand on oncology services. So the management of advanced endometriosis was typically undertaken by gynecology oncologists, but the demand increased over time. So they said that treatment of advanced endometriosis, and I quote, developed organically across Ireland. So it was basically led by individual consultants with an interest in this rather than through like a formally structured national service. And they told me that there are currently approximately 16 consultant gynecologists with specialist endometriosis expertise working across the HSE. But at the end of last year, the Minister launched the country's first national framework for the management of endometriosis. And as part of this, patients can go abroad for endometriosis surgery on an interim scheme called the Endometriosis Surgery Abroad Interim Scheme, and that covers the cost of their treatment as well as basic airfares. But the HSE have a pre-approved list of surgeons on their website that women can go to. So I spoke to surgeons in France, a French surgeon called Professor Romain, who has signed a contract with the government. He trains Irish surgeons in the management of complex endometriosis. He also treats Irish patients. And I also spoke to a surgeon in Mumbai who has treated quite a few women from Dublin. So it is crazy that women are literally getting on a flight to go to Mumbai and crossing continents for surgery that they can't get here.
Part of your article, you tell the story of Jean Brazel from Kerry. That's a remarkable story. I mean, what she's gone through is just unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, so Jean has a really complex case of endometriosis, and she was very generous in sharing her story with me. And her story really is just a battle for support, a battle for services. And the issue that she faces now is that the surgeon who has the expertise in her particular kind of the severity of her case of endometriosis is based in Italy, but he isn't on the pre-approved list of surgeons. So from what I understand, there is an ongoing conversation with the HSE where women have a surgeon that they've selected for their surgery, who they really want to do their surgery, but the cost of their surgery isn't funded if it's not on this pre-approved list of surgeons. So whether the HSE is looking at expanding the list of surgeons to which women can go, and I think that this conversation is ongoing, but I don't have any further detail than that. But yeah, it's very, very sad because women are waiting, like in Jean's case, like 3-4 decades, and they've just been kind of tolerating really intense pain. And another really concerning symptoms too.
Is the ideal, Rosalind, to deal with this as we do with cancer and possibly with centres of excellence, for example?
Yeah, I think so. Like when I spoke to Professor Romain in France, so he has like an institute for endometriosis that he established in Bordeaux along the west of France 7 years ago. He's since opened centres in other countries in the UAE, Romania, India. He's kind of creating partnerships with other countries to deliver endometriosis surgery. And when I spoke to him, he was like, to be an expert in endometriosis, you really need to decide to put the spotlight on this disease. And it's something that you need to be like an expert in. You don't need to carry out any other surgeries in any other areas of medicine. Like you should be doing endometriosis every single day. And that's, I think, what we need in Ireland. More surgeons who are literally only doing endometriosis surgery, that it is their area of expertise and it's not something they do along with loads of other surgeries. And he started to train physicians from Ireland. At the time that I spoke to him, he was training to female surgeons in Ireland, and he said to me that he thought in Ireland we would be able to wrap our arms around like the management of all types of endometriosis within 5 years. So that's another 5-year wait. But at the minute, like the issue is women at the minute in Ireland who have very severe, complex cases of endometriosis, like they have no option but to go abroad for surgery that they can't get here. But that's why the HSE has obviously rolled out this new interim scheme. So while they're trying to accelerate the development of endometriosis services in Ireland, women can go abroad for surgery. So at the same time that they're trying to improve their like domestic capacity for surgery, women can go abroad. So I suppose that's the interim solution, and they are clear that this is an interim solution, and they want to get the kind of the expertise and the skills up here that's been historically lacking.
And just finally, Rosalind, is it on the increase, or am I just hearing more about it, or was it underdiagnosed over the years?
Yeah, probably. I think it's basically the fact that it's been undiagnosed, and the fact that awareness is growing is probably why you're hearing more about it. Like March was endometriosis. Well, we're still in March actually, one day to go, but March is Endometriosis Awareness Month. So I suppose that's why you're seeing more headlines about it at the minute. But yeah, as you say, like it has been underdiagnosed. Some of the symptoms, particularly with like pain, have been confused with IBS as well.
Yes.
So that, and it is actually just hard to diagnose. Like when you speak to surgeons, often it's like women have to go for an MRI, or they literally have to be like opened up to see the endometriosis growing outside the womb. So it's, or outside the uterus, sorry. So it is actually quite hard to diagnose as well. But at the same time, I think awareness is growing, which is possibly why you're hearing more about it now, Fran.
Well, it's a fascinating piece. It's in the Irish Country Living supplement with the Farmers Journal. I think it might be up on the website as well, Rosalind, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah, it's on the website.
All right, okay. Well, lovely to talk to you today, Rosalind, and thank you for coming on with us. Thank you. Good morning to you.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
That's Rosalind Skillen there of the Irish Country Living supplement to the Farmers Journal, 1800 938 007. A message in from one of our listeners, and this is very, very sad indeed. It says, Fran, does anybody else just have a feeling of impending doom in this country? I swear, Fran, there are days I wonder if I should just up and leave. Should I take my meagre savings and take a leap of faith and fly off into the sun? As I drive down the M50 in the mornings to work, burning my very expensive fuel, I imagine it. I imagine packing my bags, telling nobody until I get there, and jumping from this burning ship. I don't know what I would do when I find myself in that funny land, but every day it gets a little bit more tempting. That's it from one of our listeners this morning. How do you feel about that? We'll take a break. Back in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, when I was speaking to Tom Finnan earlier on, I made the point that the lead story on the front of the Irish Independent today about the Garda who has been given a 2-year road ban for dangerous driving after trying to chase 2 scrambler bikes. Garda Sean Shields is his name. And he told the judge that he was trying to tackle the scourge of the recklessly driven vehicles. Now, Teresa was on to us about this, and she said the judge should talk to the parents of the 16-year-old killed by a scrambler. Justice is never for the victims, says Teresa to us today on 083 311 3311. Also, another listener on to say Simon Harris openly declared in Leicester House that he doesn't know the meaning of the word vetted, and also the government doesn't want to enforce laws because they have nowhere to put the criminals. This is one of our listeners. Now, over the past couple of weeks, we've been inundated with messages from listeners about the rising cost of living across Ireland and how it's affecting their lives. But how about these increases impacting farmers and agricultural contractors? Well, Robert O'Shea is an agricultural contractor and a member of Farm Contractors Ireland from Littleton, and he joins me now. Good morning to you, Robert.
Good morning, Fran. How are you doing?
And good to talk to you today. Would you give us the background to the current situation for agricultural contractors like yourself, Robert?
Well, Fran, I suppose agricultural contractors were facing a tough year anyway this year because price of parts had gone up considerably in the last 12 months. Price of labour has gone up in the last 12 months. And now this ridiculous price of diesel, the way it's gone. Like, I don't know if people are aware that green diesel at the moment is now more expensive, net of VAT now. We'll speak net of VAT of all these figures because most professional contractors are registered for VAT. But the green diesel today is more expensive than white diesel was the end of February. So if anyone spoke to a contractor in February to put white diesel into their vehicles, they'd tell them they were absolutely mad. And we're actually paying more for green diesel today than we would have then for white. And
the government intervention, you got 3 cents off green diesel.
Yeah, a big improvement. Like, just a few figures, Fran, to just send the thing home. Like, just now, these are out of date actually because I worked on figures for the 25th of March, the day that after the government intervention. And diesel at that stage was green diesel was around 156. Today I'm told it's somewhere in the 160, 165 range. So I'm roughly 10 cents behind where I was a week ago. And that's the way it's going up incrementally each week. But like in net, now these figures are net of VAT. So the VAT rate on the white is 23%. The VAT rate on the green is 13.5. So that must be remembered. But white diesel on the 24th of February was 136.7 plus VAT. Green diesel on the 25th of March was 137.5. Almost a cent dearer than it was. White diesel was the 24th. Green diesel on the 24th of February was 84.5. That gives a net increase of 53 cents. Whereas after the intervention by the government, white had only increased by 30. Now only, I say, by 33, 32.7.33. But like, I mean, it's now almost double the increase on the green than what the white.
Right. And the result of this, Robert, is what exactly?
Extra costs to the contractor. Simply put, Fran, I suppose you all see tractors going around the road there and whatever. A small tractor now, which farmer's tractor, is going to cost them 160, 200 euro extra to fill the tank. The contractor's tractor is costing anywhere from 200, 250 to fill a tank extra. Now, that's not total cost. It costs about 700 euro now to fill a contractor's tractor with diesel. And these tractors are using that much every day. Like, cost per hour for running a tractor has gone up. If you see this time of the year now, I'll just talk about this time of the year first, Fran. You see plenty of guys there spreading slurry and that type of thing when the weather allows. The running costs for a slurry spreading outfit, if you have a tractor and tank, you're looking at, it all depends a few things on the size of the tank, the length of the draw, all that kind of thing. But you're looking from 8 to 15 euro per hour, if an increase. That's just an increase. And by the way, the contractor is not any better off by charging that much extra as a diesel surcharge. He's only covering himself for the extra cost of diesel. This is the killingest thing of it all. Like,
yeah, but I mean obviously this will be passed on, at least in part, to the farmer.
It's going to have to be. Like, margins are tight enough in the contracting business.
And therefore, of course, will end up with the consumer paying more.
This is the thing, yeah. And, like, I mean, I cannot understand how the government haven't realised this long ago. Like, I mean, they were talking about, when they intervened in the white diesel, they were talking about the price of food and having to reduce the cost of transport of it. They forgot about the people that are producing it.
And like, what about that? Is it a case that you are forgotten about, or have they not an appreciation of this in some way? What is it?
Friend, unfortunately, the farmer is the forgotten person in this country at the moment. Go back years ago, farming was very high profile industry in Ireland. Now it's just another industry. It doesn't matter, like, whether it says go on or it doesn't go. Like, it's just totally, like, I'm not going to even say you have a Dublin-based government, but in a way you have. But, like, I mean, go back, friend, in my young day, you had in the lineup in ministers, you had the Taoiseach, the Tánaiste, the Minister for Finance and Minister for Agriculture. They were the top 4 jobs in the cabinet. Now the Minister for Agriculture, and I don't want to insult anyone, but it just appears to be a geographical position that's appointed. When they're finished with all the rest of them, they'll find someone for agriculture. And that's the way, unfortunately, that's the way agriculture is.
Well, I put it to Simon Harris yesterday that it seems at times that rural Ireland is forgotten about, and by that I meant the farming community as well as everything else. And he was quick to point out that his constituency was rural as well as urban, and he told me he did have an understanding of what was going on in rural Ireland. How would you react to that? Not a hope in hell. I'll tell you, to be honest with you, Fran, I'd say even some of the deputies that are living down the country have a problem in understanding the plight. Well, in fairness, Sean O'Farrell, the former Count Corla Fianna Fáil TD, he spoke out and he was very scathing about his own government and his own party.
Absolutely, yeah. Rightly so. Like, I mean, friend, you have. Not alone does this now, I'm talking on behalf of contractors, but not alone does this affect contractors. Like, all the elderly people in the country, they haven't access to they're dependent on home heating oil. And I'm not going to go, but you know what I mean? But that's another issue. And I heard it discussed yesterday. Like, I mean, and it is scandalous. Like, I mean, you know, they're at home all day. They need, especially the way the weather is at the moment, you need heating on in the house during the day. And it's costing them a small fortune. And it's totally ignored by the government. It appears to me as if you have to be in Dublin and you have to be in one of these high-tech industries to be listened to by the government for the last number of years.
What agricultural contractors, to some degree, do you fall between a couple of different stools? Are you represented by the farming lobby, for example?
This is the problem. Like, well, look, I mean, yes and no. Now, I'm not going to say we're not representing, but like, I mean, you have a number of contractors that are, like, I'm a tillage farmer myself as well, like, so I'm kind of falling into 2 stools, if you like. On that side, then the price of fertiliser and all affects the industry big time. But look, on a contracting basis, you've a lot of contractors in this country are farmers and contractors. So, look, FCI is well, I won't say it's relatively new. It's there 10, 15 years. Now, honestly, they're 10, 15 years now, I suppose. But it's trying to get a foothold inside the government to try and get representation for the contractor, because we have appeared to be in the forgotten group the whole time. Like, we're there, we're employing people. We're trying to run a professional business. We are running a professional business. And our costs are increasing every day. Like, I mean, even cost of parts for the last 12 months have gone up and are going to go worse, might I add. I was looking at the thing there the other night, and price of steel. Tungsten is a very important part of some of the wearing parts on ploughs and such like, and it lengthens the life of the part, as in silage harvest as well. Tungsten can't be got at the moment, unfortunately, in the world. So, and if it can, price has gone through the roof. So all these parts, this is only the start of it, friend, unfortunately, because of this war. Price of steel, price of parts of all description are going to rocket.
Did you take anything from what the Tánaiste said, that he wouldn't rule out other interventions depending on how this war goes?
We're a month into this war at the moment, and they have done absolutely nothing for the agricultural sector. Like, I mean, it was basically an insult. 3 cents, Fran.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't want to sound wrong, like, but I mean, if someone handed a young lad 3 cents, wouldn't they nearly throw it back in their face? You know, it's as simple as that. Like, I mean, they'd want to get real.
So what?
Now, I can appreciate, I suppose, their position, looking at it from both sides. You know what I mean? They haven't an infinite pool of money, but they should examine the way they're spending their money first and foremost, in my view. But also look at where it's going to affect. And this does not alone affect contractors, farmers. It's going to affect the consumer down the road. Because after all, the farmer is the primary producer of all food, and this food is going to have to go up, or else farmers aren't going to be able to stay going.
All right, Robert, I must leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for coming on with us today and giving us that insight there. That's Robert O'Shea, who's an agricultural contractor. How do you feel about that? 083 311 3311.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon, main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, part of my discussion yesterday with the Tánaiste Simon Harris focused on his position regarding the Shannon Pipeline project, and Fine Gael Councillor Phil Bugler, who has been very much to the forefront of opposition to the project, joins me now. Good morning to you, Phil.
Good morning, Fran. How are you?
And thanks very much indeed for coming on with us this morning, Phil. I know that you were with the Tánaiste yesterday because he was in Nina. Did it put you at odds with him? Because he said to me quite clearly yesterday he is for this project. You're not, Phil.
Well, I hadn't heard his interview because there was a lot going on, but I did look at his interview last night from your programme, and I put in obviously a comment, which you probably have read by now, that Simon Harris, our Tánaiste, and like a lot of politicians, Jack Chambers, do not fully understand the enormity of the impacts of this abstraction. This is a very, very serious proposal, and it's going to affect the citizens for the next generations and the generations after them. The main problem with this abstraction is the formation of algae bloom. Which is cyanobacteria. We already have algae bloom in Lough Derg because of nitrates and phosphates, and our friends Ishke Airden didn't have the foresight to put in a tertiary treatment plant in Ballina. But so we have algae bloom. If you reduce the volume of the water, the concentration of the nitrates and the phosphates come from the washing machines and cleaning agents. The nitrates come from the wastewater treatment plants, from runoff, and also from the runoff from fields, and they also come from the zebra mussels. So really in the application of Ishgairden, they haven't considered the algae bloom. This is extremely serious, especially during drought periods. So if there's algae bloom, we will have less oxygen in the water, the fish will die, the water will become toxic, it will be like Lough Neagh. And it's important to remember that Lough Neagh is 3 times the size of Lough Derg.
Yes.
So the probability of forming algae bloom in Lough Derg, I am not going to be dramatising. This is extremely serious for all the citizens of the surrounding counties and for the Nina area and for indeed Dublin. Because I'll just go on another step further.
But can I, before you do that, Phil, can I just take you back to something you said there, because I don't want listeners to miss out on how the enormity of what you said. You said that your party leader, the Tánaiste, and the Minister for Finance, Simon Harris, does not fully grasp or understand this project. That's a very big thing to say, Phil.
Well, that is the truth. They really, I suppose, Fran. I'm an organic chemist, and I understand this process very well. I have a PhD in organic chemistry. I've dealt with nitrates and phosphates all my life, as I have dealt with, organic compounds like chlorine and trihalomethanes, which I'll go on to in a minute. It's not easy if you haven't a scientific background or an ecological background to understand what's going on here. This is probably the most serious thing that will happen to Ireland.
Right. But Phil, surely there's expertise within Uisce Éireann that would have the kind of background that you would have in science.
No, I must say, and I put a question into Dáil Éireann, which I haven't got a reply yet to, a parliamentary question. I don't think Uisce Éireann, or indeed the engineering companies that will get this job, have the competencies to deal with the ecological impacts of this abstraction.
Wow.
100 years ago, we did not have the knowledge of the ecological impact of this. And to put it in perspective, before Ardna Crusher, we had 440,000 salmon in Lough Derg every year. Last year, we had 124. 20 years, I've asked Uisce Éireann, every time they came in, I said, at least, will you please put in the proper fish passes at Ardna Crusher and Partine Weir, like they have in the Nowhere. Unfortunately, 20 years later, they haven't done that. So this shows you their total lack of knowledge or laissez-faire attitude to the whole fish migration, the whole ecology of the lake. I am extremely disappointed with Uisce Éireann.
So,
and I'm disappointed with our government officials.
How did this project get to this point then? Because we're looking at a cost somewhere between 4.5 billion and up to 10 billion, depending on who you're listening to.
I'll tell you, I suppose, Fran, just to cut across to there, they came in, I suppose, in 2007. Some of these people they were going to take it from Terry Glass at the time. And I have written so many reports into them saying this is not going to work. I've explained to them the dangers of the algae bloom. I've explained about biological oxygen demand. They have not taken anything on board. Even, and every time they come in, they're like salesmen trying to sell me something, insurance or something or whatever, but they don't understand the science, and that is the whole problem with this. So just to go back to the science so that their listeners will get an understanding of what's going on here.
Yeah.
We will have algae bloom. There is no doubt in my mind. We are, as I said, Lough Neagh is 3 times the size of Lough Derg. In Lough Neagh at the moment, it's full of algae bloom. The health authorities in the Northern Ireland have said, you do not eat the fish, they cannot swim in it. And Lough Neagh is supplying 40% of the water for Northern Ireland, which is roughly about 1 million. Uisce Éireann are proposing to supply 50% of the population of Ireland, which will roughly work out at 2.7 million. So we're in a much worse position than Lough Neagh, much, much worse. The algae bloom is cyanobacteria. So the water they're going to pump to Dublin will have cyanobacteria. To get rid of that, you have to add chlorine. The chlorine will react with particles of soil or whatever in the lake, or leaves, any carbon, and they will form trihalomethanes. I've studied this all my life. Trihalomethanes are cancer causing, and because the water in the pipe could be in the pipe for 30 days, like last August when we had a hose pipe ban, and if the water is in the pipe for any length of time, the minimum time is 1.71 days. These trihalomethanes are cancer causing. You will get them while you are showering. And you have to boil the water for at least 1 minute to get 75% of them out of it. These are extremely dangerous. They're cancer causing. At the moment, the whole of the Nina supply, which comes from Coolbawn, is on the THM remedial action list. This is the water we are sending to Dublin. I would say to the people of Dublin, stand up and do not take this water. That you have plenty of options on your doorstep, which I can tell you about. So the other problem is, I've discussed the algae bloom. This is extremely serious for the whole of the country. I've discussed the THMs, extremely serious. The one other concern is the zebra mussels. Lough Derg, there are 10,000 zebra mussels per square metre. The area of Lough Derg is 1,834 kilometres square. So there's billions, trillions of zebra mussels. The larvae from the zebra mussels produce nitrates by their process of filtering water. So they add to the problem. But the larvae of the zebra mussels will get into the grate at the abstraction point and will cling to the pipe and will cling to the reservoir in Piedmont. They will eventually block this pipe. Ischia have based all their knowledge on Lake Erie, one of the Great Lakes in North America.
Yes.
They are spending 200 million annually, just trying to keep the larvae out of the extraction point. So there's so many problems. This flawed process, this flawed proposal will go nowhere when it goes to
Phil,
Europe.
I'm just about out of time, and it's a pity because this is fascinating. Did you explain all of this to the Tánaiste yesterday? Because he certainly doesn't seem to understand this.
I explained, I sent all my submission to his advisor. Unfortunately, they mustn't have read it. They don't know it. I did the same for the Limerick councillors, Peter Doyle. I explained it to Councillor Peter Doyle in Limerick, who took it on board. I went around to councillors to explain to them in detail the enormity and the disastrous consequences.
And can I just put to you, because as I say, I'm just heading to news, but yesterday I said to Simon Harris, I asked him if he was in favour of the pipeline. He said, I do, but I want to get it right. He says this is a chance for Irish Water to do the right thing, and there's a way of doing it wrong, and they need to make sure they do it right. But basically, he's saying, I'm absolutely in favour of this. So he hasn't read your submission to him, obviously.
No, he has not. He doesn't.
Were you cross with him? Were you cross with him about this?
I was very cross, but I was very busy all day because we had a lot on. But I suppose I hadn't heard his interview. He hadn't contacted me over the weekend to get my viewpoint, but I had sent all the information to his advisor. Unfortunately, he didn't get the time to read it or whatever. But it's similar to Jack.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Thanks, Pat. Welcome back to the second hour of Tip Today. Morris was on to say, brilliant interview with Phil Bugler. She's an expert in her field, unlike those clowns from Uisce Éireann. And also she has the courage to speak up against her party leader. Another listener saying a very knowledgeable person, Phil Bugler. She should be running this project and make the best recommendations to the Dáil, as they don't seem to have a clue. 1800 938 007 is our free phone number. The text and WhatsApp is 083 311 3311. And of course you can email tiptoday@tipfm.com. Glad to be joined now by Independent Deputy Seamus Healy. Good morning to you, Seamus.
Good morning, Fran, and good morning, listeners.
Good to talk to you, Seamus. We're hearing from our listeners over some time now about how difficult it is to get by with the general cost of living. But in recent weeks, Seamus, particularly the cost of fuel and home heating oil. What are you hearing from your constituents?
Well, I mean, I'm hearing that people are finding it absolutely difficult to make ends meet. Even before the increases due to the Iran war, we've had soaring prices, both in relation to things like food, groceries, insurance, road tolls, and people are just finding it very difficult to make ends meet. And the budgets, the current year's budget issued in November of last year was predicated on a 2% inflation rate. Now that inflation rate had gone up to 2.6% before the end of the year, and it's now running apparently at 3.6%. And then we now have the Iran war on top of that, and we have a situation where home heating oil is almost twice the cost that it was before the war. We're still looking at diesel prices which are in excess of €2 per litre. The petrol prices are very similar, somewhat less, but similar. And the whole ongoing cost of living crisis combined now with the war is putting families under huge pressure, and anyone who is ill or on disability or that are finding it absolutely impossible to make ends meet. And of course, the indications of that are the fact that nearly 400,000 people are in arrears on their electricity bills, and I think it's about 185,000 in arrears on their gas bills. I think everybody was looking forward to some reasonable relief in the package last week. And I think most people were very disappointed in that. I mean, we have a package of something like 250 million euros, which effectively is a pittance. And when you compare that to the package that we had for the budget 2025, which was introduced in October of 2024, that package was in the region of 2.5 billion euros. But of course, that package was in the run-up to a general election, and the idea was that the government were trying to buy the election. So, they were able to introduce a package of 2.5 billion. Then now the package is 250 million, which really is very much scratching the surface.
Do you accept what's said about the home heating oil, Seamus, that the EU rules, such as what is it called, the Energy Taxation Directive, isn't it? That limits how far excise duties can be reduced. Do you accept that is the case?
I don't, friend, because it appears to me that very many countries in the EU can take unilateral decisions in relation to all sorts of issues. So, I mean, even if there's a general rule, I believe that it is open to the state, to the Irish government, to make and take unilateral decisions in relation to this. I mean, the situation is such that 750,000 Irish families got no relief at all in relation to home heating oil in the package last week. And that's a situation that is intolerable. I mean, it's unfair to those families. And I believe it is something that the government can decide on themselves. As I said, other European governments have made unilateral decisions in relation to other issues. So I don't see why that wouldn't be possible by the Irish government as well.
I put this to the Tánaiste yesterday. People really are at the pin of the collar out there, and some people spoke to Leanne over the last couple of days, and they literally are in that situation that we keep hearing about, which is eating or heating. But he pointed to the extension of the fuel allowance, for example, as being a positive. What do you say to that?
Look, I mean, anything is a help, obviously, but a 4-week extension to the fuel allowance amounts to little or nothing in effect. I mean, it's 38 euros per week for 4 weeks. I mean, we've been calling for an emergency winter payment, and I know we're in the spring and heading for summer now, but we've been looking for an emergency winter payment, way back since last October. And it's something that should be even considered at this stage, because we've had various different organisations in the AV room in Leinster House recently, and who've said just as you said there, they have to make decisions of whether they're heating or eating. Disability people have told us that they sometimes have to make a decision as to whether they should charge their wheelchair or eat. So, I mean, people are under severe pressure in relation to this, and I believe that winter payment should be agreed by the government and paid out urgently, because people are in fact at the pin of their collar, and there's no doubt about that. I get calls every day from people who find it impossible to make ends meet.
I put it to him as well that maybe the carbon tax should be looked at, and I know that we're looking at prices being increased further, in fact, in a couple of months' time. But he pointed out that if he were to do that, they'd have to pull back on retrofitting and the grants available to people to increase their BER rating and stuff like that. What do you make of that response?
Well, first of all, I'd say this, that I've called for the increase on the 1st of May to be withdrawn, and we're in a very difficult situation already. Why in God's name should we make that situation worse by increasing, taxes from the 1st of May? Now, this suggestion that it will affect retrofitting or monies will have to be taken somewhere else, and that, for instance, the winter emergency payment is not sustainable. That just doesn't hold water. The fact of the matter is that this year's budget is predicated on and targeting a budget surplus of €5 billion. In the last 3 years, 25, 24 and 23, there was a budget surplus, would you believe, of €42 billion. And there is also a backup fund of €20 billion in the Ireland Future Fund and the Climate Fund. So the Tánaiste's argument, I'm afraid, simply doesn't hold water. And I mean, there's no way that in the situation where we find ourselves under such pressure that we should increase taxes. I think at the very least that increase in the carbon tax from the 1st of May should be at least deferred for this year at least.
Is this the rainy day? You know the funding that we've been putting away for the rain. Is this the rainy day?
Well, I mean, it's pouring rain, Fran, isn't it? I mean, as I said, we've already have a cost of living crisis even before this war started. I led a 2-hour debate on this in the Dáil back before the Christmas, there was story after story after story of families who are put to the pin of their collar to try and make ends meet because of huge increases right across the board, and the withdrawal, of course, of the various credits and the once-off payments in the budget for this year contributed to that. On top of that, we had very wet weather prior to the war in Iran, but it's absolutely bucketing down now because we have a situation now where, the whole question of transport, the question of the closure of the straits, that's all feeding in to increased prices, initially in relation to fuel, but that will transfer itself into all other items, particularly food items, agricultural items. So we're looking at a perfect storm, in fact. So this is the rainy day, and the monies that have been put aside should be used, I believe, to tackle the cost of living crisis.
Is there still that emergency fund? I remember years ago in Cashel, was it called a community welfare officer or something? Is that still available to people?
Well, it's in theory, Fran, it's available, and it's something that annoys me greatly to hear ministers almost on a daily basis telling people that if they're in very serious difficulty, they can apply to the community welfare officer for an exceptional needs payment. Well, I have to tell you, Fran, that my experience of that process is anything but good. It's a means-tested payment. It's a discretionary payment, and the fact of the matter is that most people who apply, for instance, if you're applying for help with fuel, if you're in receipt of the fuel allowance, you won't get an exceptional needs payment. So that payment, that exceptional needs payment, is simply not fit for purpose. It's not an effective payment for families that are under pressure. And as I said, I find it annoying to hear ministers referring to it because it's anything but helpful in the circumstances. What we need is a structured response by the government to a very, very difficult situation. The money is available, and the monies that are already put aside should be used to help families who are in very serious need because of the cost of living crisis.
We heard earlier on, Seamus, from retired Garda, and I'm sure, gentlemen, you know Tom Finnan, former GRA rep for Tipperary, and he shared his perspective on the current state of the force. He spoke very strongly indeed about the issues facing the Gardaí, including recruitment challenges and rising resignations and concerns around management, and what he described as a culture of fear, indeed, when it comes to speaking out. Now, this is something you spoke about in the Dáil recently. Would you go along with Tom's view of the way the force is at the moment?
Well, I have very serious concerns about what's happening to the force, particularly in areas outside of Dublin and Cork. It would appear to me, from my own experience on the ground, from constituents who have been in touch with me on a consistent basis over the last number of years, in fact, that the right across South Tipperary, that the staffing structure is simply not acceptable. I've come across numerous situations where members of the public haven't been able to get in contact with Gardaí through their local Garda station. A member of the public contacted me the week before last, telling me that a female Garda who was on duty on her own was assaulted. So we have a situation where Gardaí on the beat are almost non-existent now, and we also now have a situation where Gardaí are being sent on duty single-handed on their own, and I believe that's simply not acceptable. We have a situation then where new Gardaí coming out of Templemore are being sent effectively to Dublin and Cork, and other areas of the country has been starved. We had a situation here in this area last year where we were given 4 additional Gardaí, and it turned out the effect of that was a reduction of 1 because of retirements and transfers. That situation is unsustainable, and there is a concern out there among the public that there is not effective Garda control right across the board, that the Gardaí are not visible enough, that they're not on the beat, that community Gardaí are not available and are not staffed properly. I think we need to turn out more trainee Gardaís through Templemore, and I think that should be done sooner rather than later. The whole Garda structure and the restructuring of the Garda as well over the last number of years, I don't think that has served the force well. It certainly, I don't believe it served the people of South Tipperary well, and I think that needs to be looked at again, and I think it's something that the new Garda Commissioner should certainly look at and review and consider changing.
I was talking to Deputy Alan Kelly about this yesterday, and I put it to him, is it time for us to look into Drew Harris's tenure as Garda Commissioner? And he agreed. How would you feel about that? Do you think that reign should be examined in some way?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that I was very much opposed to the appointment of Drew Harris initially, and I do believe that his whole tenure has created difficulties right across the force. I recall being at a meeting in Thurles where he addressed the elected members from Tipperary, and it was clear to me from his contribution that the whole Garda community structure was going to be in serious difficulty. Of course, he objected to that and said I wasn't correct, but I believe that history, as this year have shown, that there has been a complete rundown of the community Garda service right across the country during his tenure, and definitely I would certainly agree that it would be worthwhile having a look and a review of his tenure of office, because I believe that it certainly wasn't one that was positive for the Garda force, or indeed for the public generally.
Simon Harris responded to what you said in the Dáil, but he doesn't seem to find an issue. I mean, he spoke about the significant increase in the numbers of Garda training in Templemore, but there was no mention of the resignations. And in fact, also something that emerged this morning, Seamus, is that some of the young guards coming out, they don't stay very long in the force. They decide to leave for some reason or other.
Well, you know, the difficulty the difficulty arises in relation to questioning the Taoiseach or the Tánaiste in the Dáil is that, generally speaking, what happens is that they deflect the question, or they refuse to answer the question, or they only half answer the question. You know, it's important to follow up and continue raising the questions with them. And you know, that's important from the point of view of Oireachtas members and indeed public representatives generally. And I don't believe that the you know, that the government, the minister, really understands or realises the difficulties that are there for the public and for the Garda force, particularly, as I say, in areas outside Dublin and Cork. You know, I would feel that, you know, the whole enforcement area is not being operated properly, and one of the reasons for that, and probably the major reason for that, is the lack of Garda numbers on the ground. Now, there's obviously a difficulty within the force because, as you say, it is correct that many young Gardaí who you know, go through quite a difficult or a strenuous training, education and training exercise in coming to the force, then only stay a short period of time. And, you know, that's an area that needs to be reviewed as well, because we need to know why that is happening. And, of course, we also need additional recruitment into the Gardaí on an ongoing basis, on a structured basis, because only additional numbers and I think the rejig and the restructuring of the Garda districts will give us an effective Garda force, and one that creates a safe environment for the public generally.
Seamus, thanks for your time this morning. Thank you. Good morning to you. That's Deputy Seamus Healy speaking to us this morning. 1800 938 007. A listener says, I live alone. I haven't had proper food in 3 days, just can't afford the basics. So to answer your question, it's not just a rainy day, it's a complete storm. Somebody else telling me about diesel, and it's mentioning the particular garage here, but I can't read it out because I don't have our own confirmation of this. But anyway, a listener telling me $2.38 for diesel now, today, which sounds extremely expensive. Now, I saw it up to about $2.19 on my way into the studio this morning, but that's pretty much incredible. Somebody is saying, great insight from Robert O'Shea. Robert was the agricultural contractor who spoke to us earlier on. Listener goes on to say it's a very difficult industry to be in. Farming, agriculture is badly affected and largely ignored by the politicians. Another listener, an extension to the fuel allowances for people unemployed or whoever else is getting these payments. What about low paid workers that have to pay for all of their meds and doctors and fuel to get to work, and it's just becoming impossible? It's nearly costing me half of what I'm earning to get to work now as a cleaner on a low wage, says a listener on 083 311 3311.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tipp Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Welcome back. A major new 4-part documentary series, Coishira, will premiere tomorrow, the 1st of April, at 9:30 on TJ Carr. The Irish language series tells the story of the River Suir, and the producer of Coishira, Darina Clancy, joins me now. Good morning to you, Darina.
Good morning, Dias Margaret, Conasaku.
Oh, Tommy Gohanawa, her fod, indeed. Thanks. Except I'm moaning about man flu here, and I'm getting absolutely no sympathy, Dorina. If you read,
That's not fair. That's just not fair.
Not fair at all. John G. O'Dwyer told me about this series last week. I'm really looking forward to it. Where did the inspiration for the series come from, Dorina?
So we had produced a series called Cosh Moira, which is a series about the River Blackwater in Youghal, that ends in Youghal in County Cork, which is where I'm from. So that one was a real labour of love for me, in the sense that it was my ending in my hometown, and we went up to the very source up in Slieve and came down through Mallow, Lismore, Cappoquin, that sort of area. And it was based on the writings of a man called Aunry Olehan, who also comes from the area that I'm from, in Glendine, and he basically wrote a book about it in the 60s. And he had walked the length of the River Blackwater back then. And then Aunry, later on in his years, went on to walk the River Suir. So the natural progression from us doing the River Blackwater was to follow in the footsteps of Aunry once again and do the River Suir. So that's where the inspiration came from.
Now, of course, Tipperary is very, very prominent because the source is the Devil's Bit. What is the terrain like up at the source, by the way? Because I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of, as we'd say, conspóideach. There's a little bit of controversy around, where the actual source of the shore is, as in the bubbling,
yes.
Bubbling water, because it's not actually at the Devil's Bit per se. It's a little bit over to that, So there was, it's really, really hard to pinpoint. So we had gone up there a few times between the researchers and myself and John G, etc., to try and find exactly where it was. And as you can imagine, there's quite a lot of little streams and little wells and things like that kind of form, that eventually come together. And up in that area, there are so many little streams and rivers and waterways. It's almost really, really hard to pinpoint. So, and even if you look at the various different maps, they kind of contradict each other, actually. You know what I mean? So the best way that I can describe it is that it's over to the right, and that it's of the Devil's Bit, and that it's if you follow the line of the deciduous trees, the natural trees, as against the creelte, the trees that would have been planted in later, that's where the source is. So it's quite hidden. It's actually quite hidden and quite hard to find.
Well, that in itself is very interesting. So you come down through Lochmore, Templemore, Thurles. At what stage do you begin to use the canoe? Because that's part of it, isn't it?
Great question. So in this series, it was very, very different to the previous one, in that, like in the Blackwater, it comes down quite quickly, so you can start getting into the canoe quite quickly. Whereas with the Suir, there's a distinct drop, obviously from that mountain, where it is, it's very like a stream, and it gets bigger and bigger. And I can imagine over the last couple of months that it was entirely unrecognisable to what we saw because of the amount of rain.
Sure, yeah.
But we put the canoe in just before Templemore. But that's where Colm gets into his canoe and begins to navigate the shore by water.
Fascinating. And is it from there on? Is it easy to navigate?
It's quite. So we would have recce'd it. A gang of kayakers, female kayakers, and myself would have recce'd it. As in, we would have kayaked the entirety of it, just to see what was safe, what wasn't, etc., etc. And it's quite a challenge, because there's a lot of reeds. Again, in the wintertime, those reeds would be pretty much invisible, but in the summertime, when it's quite low, the reeds are quite high. They're up to about 1 meter above you, so you're kind of paddling almost with your paddle above your head, especially from kind of Lochmore down as far as Thurles, which is it's a long paddle. That paddle from Lochmore to Thurles, so it goes around and winds and winds and winds. And I remember at one stage we were there there was a mast to our right, and it seemed that we were paddling for hours and hours and hours, and the mast was still to our right. But it was because we were going around in a very big wide circle, which is understandable. But it's beautiful, though.
I have to say,
I'm sure it's gorgeous.
Really
and of course, the column you're referring to there is the historian Dr. Colm McGarrett, who is retracing that journey. Who does he speak to along the way? Who does he involved in the programme?
Who does he speak to is more the question, really. So, I mean, right up at the source, for example, obviously John G was the best person to come to. We speak to Jim Ryan from Jim of the Mills. We actually saw the mass up on the Devil's Bit that takes place up there. You know, what else do we see? We come down and we meet Lynn Kirkham, who is an artist who lives at the foot of the mountain there. We meet some fantastic musicians in Killay. So that's ever before we even get to Lochmore, where we meet Tom Larkin, and we go into the cottage because it would, you couldn't not go to Lochmore and not go to the cottage.
Yeah.
And then we obviously come down into Thurles, the home of hurling. So we meet Liam there, and we talk to Liam about Central Stadium and that sort of thing. But we also speak to another Liam, of course, who's Liam O'Wayne Lee, who revisits his trip to Tipp and kind of salutes Colm on his trip to Tipp.
It's the Liam of Hothouse Flowers, of course, yeah.
Yeah, Liam O'Wayne from Hothouse Flowers, who also incidentally composed the score for the series, which is stunning, to be quite honest, and really gets the mood of the river across at all times. But we don't just talk to people. Colm kind of visits little areas and kind of learns about folklore and things like that along the way. We go down into Cashel, we go fishing in Cashel with George, we go down into Clare. We literally see all the sights that the river has to offer, and not just that, but we get to meet people that you'd never normally meet, and you get to see the Tipperary from a point of view that you never normally would,
It sounds fascinating. And, without getting too airy-fairy about it, by comparison to the Blackwater, for instance, the shore, does it have a personality, Darina? I mean, is there a particular thing that's individual?
Yes, you're absolutely spot on, because from the minute that we began to research it, for me, it had an entirely different personality. And you have to remember that back in the day of Celtic times, all of our rivers were named after deities. So, for example, the Blackwater off Gaeilge is called Owen Moor na Moon, but it's actually it's not necessarily the big river. It's actually the deity Moor. It's called after the deity Moor, no less than the Liffey would have been called after the deity there.
Yes.
And here in the shore, for example, it just has a bit of divilment to it. It's like that me describing there that trip from Lochmore to Thurles on the kayak. You think you're almost there, and then it's not. It's kind of fooling you a little bit. And even though it's quite a shallow river in most of it's quite shallow. It's actually what's the word? It's kind of rumbling along very, very fast all the time. So there's just divilment to it all the time, I think, is the best description of it. You think you have it sorted, and you really don't.
Well, we're all so looking forward to it. So it's tomorrow night at 9:30 on TG Carr, then, isn't it, Darina?
9, tomorrow night. That's the first programme. And it is, I have to say, available internationally on the player. So once it goes out, it will be available on the TG Carr player internationally with subtitles. So you can tell all of your friends, everybody who's abroad, just use it as a calling card to show off how beautiful Tipperary is.
Well, we're all looking forward to it, as I say. Darina, Gurmila Mahagut, and lovely to talk to you today, and many congratulations on the wonderful work you're doing, by the way. Thank you.
Gurmila Mahagut. Slán, Gurmila Mahagut.
Slán, Darina. That's Darina Clancy speaking to us there, who is the producer of Coshura on TG Carr tomorrow night. Looking forward to that, and featuring our own John G. O'Dwyer, of course, as well. We'll take a break. We're back with interior design in just a smidgen.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon, main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Join the conversation in Tipperary. Contact us through Facebook, Twitter, or email tipptoday@tippfm.com.
Now, Michael was on to us from Killinall, and he says, does anybody think of the refugees who live in our local communities, for example, the Ukrainians living on €34 per adult? It's simply cruel and inhumane, and nobody speaks up for them. Shame on the government and the people of Ireland. This is Michael in Killinall. What do you think about that? 083 311 3311. Now we're here in Nina, and Karen, our interior design expert, is in Clonmelford this morning. Good morning to you, Karen.
Good morning, Fran.
And good to talk to you today. And sadly, we're not face to face today, but it won't stop us in the least.
No, I have lots to talk about today. So today we're talking about exterior painting.
Yeah, and what about that? Because you're telling us timing is everything where exterior
timing is everything, and I suppose it's the time of year. We've longer evenings. The weather's getting that little bit better. The sun is shining, and we can see things that need to be done inside and outside. So painting outside is really happening now between April and September. Ideally, dry spells between 10 to 20 degrees. Avoiding rain for at least 24 hours before and after, if possible, is the best way about it. And I suppose don't paint in direct blazing sun or high winds. So that's important too, just that you'll get the paint on, dried properly, and the job done without any drama, really, Fran.
So let's talk about the exterior walls then, Karen, if we can at all. So preparation, is that the secret to this?
It is, and I think that's where some people can go wrong. That your walls, exterior walls of the house or the shed or walls outside or whatever, they need to be cleaned thoroughly. So power wash if needed to remove dirt, algae, or if there's mould on them, because even when you're passing different houses in different places, I often see black or red marks on the side of a house or whatever, so that does need to be washed first with a power washer, and maybe use a fungicidal wash on that as well. The next thing is to repair cracks and fill to stabilise any flakes that are there, and to fill the cracks maybe with a filler that's movable, that won't crack again, and then let those areas dry fully. Sometimes this can take a few days depending on the weather here in Ireland, so that's important to get the prep right.
And do you use a primer when you're painting outside?
Not necessarily, no, not necessarily at all, unless it's chalky or new. You might need a primer, but a good masonry paint is really important, and always apply 2 coats. Even if you're kind of coating over the same colour again, Fran, there may be areas that will critically need 2 coats, but 2 coats at a minimum, because most of us, we're not going to be painting outside every year, so it's maybe a project that we're doing every 3-4 years. Some people, if they're living in the country or living in the town and they were near a road, they might need their front wall done more often, or the front of their house done more often, but most of us, we don't necessarily paint the outside every year or 2.
We often hear about the fashion where the interior colours are concerned, but what about exterior stuff? Are there particular colours?
Oh, friend, there is, and I have some colours to call out today, so if people have a pen and paper. And again, the usual when we're talking about colours, if they Google the name of the colour that we're talking about, it'll come up in a swatch online for them, no problem. So a lot of people now have grey windows, so I have a lovely colour scheme here today that if someone has grey windows, on the wall colour for the house, to use cherished white. That's a gorgeous light grey colour. And if you did want to match up the grey windows that you would have in the house, they're really popular the last few years. Templar grey is the nearest colour match that I can get to those windows, so that would be lovely on your window sills and your window frames. And then if you wanted a really nice colour for your front door, 4 arches is a beautiful colour for the front door to complement the cherished white on the walls and the Templar grey on the window sills and
Very
reveals.
Good. So again, if people Google those, just would you read those out to us?
Of course I will.
Again,
so the wall
Karen,
colour is cherished white, the sill and window frame colour is Templar grey, and the front door colour is 4 arches.
Very good indeed. I love the idea of decking, but one of the reasons I don't have it, Karen, is that I know the amount of upkeep on it. It's very time consuming, and you really have to look after it, don't you?
You do, and the thing is with the decking, when you get it, it needs to be treated properly first and foremost. The first day it goes down, and then every year, at least once or twice a year, it needs to be looked after as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a good bit about decking today. So I suppose the first thing, if you have decking, and I did my deck last week, and the first thing I had to do was get a deck wash. So I got a gallon of deck wash. It's pre-mixed and everything in a gallon. I think it was $13.99, and I hoovered up my deck outside, and I put down the deck wash, left it there for a while, washed it with a scrubbing brush, and then washed it off. I didn't put on the power washer, I just washed it off with a hose, and it came up spanking new. And then I left that completely dry, and I put on the deck paint on that. Now the deck I happen to be talking about outside my back door is covered in, so it's not getting all the weather.
Right,
but
okay.
as you're saying, a lot of people have the deck and it's getting all the weather, so it's to keep it washed and you're painted every year, and to make sure that you don't go at it with a power washer. I would say a power washer can take off the paint in certain places and not in others, and that destroys it. So you're much better off to get the wash for the deck.
Yes.
Do it with a brush, wash it off with water, a hose, and leave it dry, and that does a better job.
They get very slippy as well, Karen.
They can, and we've had this conversation before. Up at my back shed, I have the composite decking, and I find it so slippy in the winter towards the timber decking. Now that's my own personal opinion, and it's so much more expensive as well. So I have some colours that, if it's okay, that I can call out for decking paint as well today, and to help people, that if you have a deck and you don't want it, we'll say an orangey colour stain or a brown colour stain, I've got a couple of really lovely colours to call out today that's available in a decking paint.
Yeah, and are you going to call those
I am,
out
if
for
that's
us now,
okay.
Karen?
Yeah,
of course
so,
it is.
What the first one I have is slate, so that's a dark grey, and it's a beautiful colour, and we'll go with a lot of what's out in the garden, and maybe what colours you've painted your main house in as well. That slate's a great one. Another, if someone's looking for a green, it's sage is the colour, and that's a beautiful green. Another one is willow. It's kind of a taupey, a dark taupe. It's stunning. It's really, really lovely. And another one that I use quite a bit is warm stone. So there are 4 beautiful decking paint colours that will transform your deck, whether it's new. Now I'm talking about timber deck, whether it's new or whether it's an old deck, but the prep is everything.
All right, and the composite that you have as part of your outdoors, can you paint that, by the way?
I've never painted it, and I've never come across anyone that's painted it. I'm sure you can, if you use the proper cleaning method and the proper primer, it can be painted. But the composite decking, Frank, comes in a variety of colours. If you're in an area that you feel that it suits, and I'm not knocking the composite decking, because I know maybe 5-6 years ago when it came out first and it was so popular, and still is so popular and expensive, a lot of people have it. But in the winter time, you just need to be careful. If you're out the back and there is ice or snow or anything like that, it can become quite slippy.
It can be slippy. Is it like PVC? Is that what composite?
It is a little bit, yeah. It is a little bit, yeah, a little bit softer. But, and again, it's made for exterior and the whole lot. But my own experience of it, on the thoroughfare that I'd be walking through on the frosty mornings, it can get quite slippy.
Okay. Fences. What about fences?
And again, lots of us have fences, including myself. So, and fences tend to soak up paint an awful lot more, and fence paint that you buy tends to be quite watery and runny, but it goes on very easily and it goes a long way, so it's quite a cheap option to paint your fence. So the first thing, the preparation for that, is to brush off the dirt and any loose debris that's there, like you might have anything on the fence, really, you know what I mean? And treat, if there is any mould or mildew, which I didn't have on my fence this year, treat that, and a light sanding if it's needed. Gosh. Most fences it's not. It's just a case of clean it down with maybe a sweeping brush, get rid of any bits and pieces that might have gathered during the winter, leaves or different bits, and get it cleaned up that way. And
but
then
it's a particular sort of paint, is it, Karen?
Yes, it is. So you use an exterior wood paint or a stain. And if it's new, you might need to apply a wood preservative first. If it's not new, you just need 1 to 2 coats of the exterior wood paint or stain. And again, I have a few colours I'd love to call out, if that's okay this morning.
Yes, please, yeah.
So the first one is a lovely grey. It is frosted glass. Mm-hmm. Another one is cool marble. If you're looking for a darker grey, you might have a dark grey deck, smooth pebble. A beautiful sandy shell is quite a pale colour. It's gorgeous. We have a woodland mink, and we have a muted clay. They're all gorgeous colours, and they're kind of in keeping with the colours that I've already given you for the decking boards as well, so I'm getting a little bit of a colour scheme going.
Very good indeed. And all of this stuff, is that readily available in our paint shops?
Already available. So if you go into any of the hardware shops, they have certain paints for your deck, certain paints for your fences, sheds and your furniture, and obviously and I would say go with the brands. Go with a good masonry paint and good brands for your decking and your fence, because I have only always used the same brands, and I find that they work year in, year out for me, and it means that I don't have to paint as much. Fran, often a cheaper option when you're working with exterior painting mightn't be the best.
Your designer tip, I'm taken by that, because, you know, we can have very dull days, God knows, in this country, and the weather is just as bad at times. But what about colour to sort of make up for that in some way,
you know,
Karen?
I think it's not just about style, it's about light. And again, I was talking about the deck I've outside the front door, and I've spoken before, not to get into my own house, but you walk in my front door and you walk out my back door, there is no side windows. So I needed my deck to be bright, so I chose a timber deck that I could paint. And I chose a warm light colour. So my floor in my kitchen, my deck is an extension of that. Even though it's not exactly the same colour, the tones are the same. So even on a cold and miserable day, and God knows in January and February this year, friend, I just found them such long months and such dark months, that to have the brightness outside made all the difference to me. So I just find the colours, again, I've called out today, I've kept them bright, I've kept them light, hoping that they would encourage people to think brighter and lighter.
Just mistakes that we might be making in terms of painting out of doors. Would you just run through a couple of them that we need to avoid?
Painting over damp walls, make sure they're dry, and that the paint isn't going to flake and bubble afterwards, because you mightn't see it straight away, but it might happen in a couple of weeks' time when it dries out. Skipping the prep. So as we spoke about the prep in all through all the headings, it's 80% of the job to get that right. Don't use inside paint outside. If you have a bit left over in a tin and you think it's going to work, it probably isn't going to work unless the area is definitely covered in. Choosing trendy greys that don't suit Irish light. So if you're going for a grey, going for a warm grey, make sure it's connecting to the other colours that you have outside and inside as well, that you can see the outside from. And I suppose a big one is that we don't allow enough drying time between coats of paint. So again, take your time, leave it dry. I mean, on a good day, friend, on a good warm day, you'd easily get 2 coats on a fence, because the drying time is quick. If you started early and you finished before it got too cold at night time, you know. So I suppose if you have a big area to cover, get some hands on deck and give you a hand to get it, because the timing is everything, and the weather is important. So sometimes if we get a spell of good weather and we want to get a little bit of good work done outside, get it done fast and get some of the family on board or friends.
It always strikes me, Karen, and it's one of the reasons why I don't do this kind of stuff. Well, one would be laziness. The other has to be patience. And you have to be very patient, haven't you?
You have to be patient. And I think it's like when we talk about any subject with interior design, knowledge is everything. So having the right paint, knowing what to do, having the right brushes and rollers, and having the patience is the same. Like I'm talking about painting, fencing and decking and the whole lot. First of all, I wouldn't have the patience to do it. Second of all, my back would give me trouble, friend. I wouldn't be able to do it. So there's a myriad of things, you know. But it's nice. It's never so more important. I mean, every day we're hearing on the radio, you know, prices are gone up, everything is hitting us again all of a sudden. Like, we need our house to be nice. And a lot of people in the COVID would have built an outside area, and they mightn't have done that with it in a while, and they might have left it go because maybe they're not using it now in the last while. I feel it's important that to have a little place outside that you feel happy and content in, that you can go out and enjoy it. So I think. Right.
And just briefly before I let you go, I mean, we're hearing about the cost of everything going through the roof. Is that reflecting itself in your business? Paints, wallpapers, all of the
I have
stuff?
to say, not really so much. I think it's only starting to filter through. For instance, this morning now, I was getting some printing done, and the printing has gone up maybe by 15%, you know, and I don't see, but what I do see, and again, not necessarily in paint and everything, but what I do see in my own life, using things on an everyday basis, and I've heard my sister saying this as well, the size of the products have dramatically decreased, but we're paying the same money. So when we open something, there's less of the product in there, but the price has gone up.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24111.
Thanks, Pat, and welcome back to the final hour of Tip Today. It's time to say hello to our agony aunt, Phil Prendergast, but she's in Clonmel and I'm in Nina. Good morning to you, Phil.
I'll have to shout.
Yeah.
Good morning, Fran.
Good to talk to you, Phil. How are things with you?
Very good, yeah, can't complain.
Good. Well, we have some complaints into us, I guess, and some problems that they need you to have a look at. So we launch straight in with letter number 1. Dear Phil, I don't even know how to say this without sounding horrible, but I've started to feel genuinely embarrassed by my parents. My dad keeps trying to be funny, telling these awful jokes that just make everybody groan, and he honestly just comes across as stupid. And my mum, well, she puts on this fake posh voice like she's in some drama class, and everything she says sounds completely rehearsed. I can't even be in the same room without wanting to hide under a blanket. It's getting to the point where I avoid having friends over at all. Everybody else talks about their cool or normal parents, and I just feel like mine are acting out some weird comedy sketch. I know they love me, but I can't help feeling embarrassed. Like, why can't they just be normal? Sometimes I wish I could disappear whenever they start doing their funny or posh routines. It's exhausting, and honestly, it's kind of humiliating. What do you make of that, Phil?
I don't know that there's a family member that isn't embarrassed by their parents at some stage, Fran. But I would just think that the person here needs to kind of relax about how the parents are. He can't really change how they are, but she can change how they feel about them. You know, I mean, I think there's often a time where you have somebody new coming into the house, like a new friend or whatever, and the parents start acting up, and you just have to, it's probably best to ignore them entirely, but sometimes I remember you'd be warning someone, now my mother can be a bit odd, don't mind her, you know, on the way in, but yeah, look, it's getting to the point where this person is trying to avoid having friends coming over at all. I think they're probably overthinking this. And yeah, some dads do awful dad jokes, and sometimes mum could have the posh voice on her, but I mean, you just would laugh at that, you know.
I suppose, yeah. But do you know what I put some of it down to? It's kind of nervousness. I mean, if the dad is trying to be funny, he's just trying to, I don't know, be personable, I suppose, and make somebody feel welcome. But it probably comes across a bit groany and a bit corny.
Well, it would, you see. Dad jokes can be woeful. They can just really embarrass people. And, you know, the child, in this case, considers him to be stupid for telling these awful jokes, and I suppose really what he's trying to do is try to be welcoming, I suppose, and trying to be, you know, personable, but it comes across the wrong way. But I think the young person in this case needs to probably relax a little bit about it and stop overthinking it.
Yeah, the idea of having the posh voice on the phone, we all remember. Is that still a thing? Or it doesn't appear to be, to me, anyways.
No, I don't think so, Fran. Mrs. Bouquet has kind of gone out of things for people, but you know, there was a time, I suppose, when phones were relatively a new thing, where there might be a little bit of poshness would creep in when you're answering the phone, but you'd get over it fair fast. Or you'd be told to get over it.
We're not sure what age this person is who has written to us. It sounds like they're teenager, possibly?
I would say probably a teenager, because at that particular time when they're coming into puberty and stuff like that, they can get embarrassed very easily by their parents or by events or by schools or by teachers or by people paying attention to them where they would have been under the radar before, and that can be difficult to try and get around it. But really, I suppose it's just one of those things where young people are embarrassed by their parents, and nothing much is going to change about that.
I suppose I found that transition difficult, where they believe that you know everything and you're kind of heroic to them in some way, and then all of a sudden, and it seems to happen overnight, they're embarrassed by you. It's kind of hard to deal with at times, isn't it?
It sure is, yeah. It sure is. I think you're always going to have some point, especially when puberty and all that starts, because they're coming to terms with the changing dynamic within themselves, and whether this is a male or female, we're not quite sure. But different puberty affects males and females a bit differently as well, I suppose. And sometimes it's being mortified over the parents is the thing, but it'll be something else next week.
How should the parents deal with it, Phil, do you think? I mean, should they just pull back a bit, or...?
You see, I don't think the father is I don't think he means to be telling awful jokes, but it's just the way he is, and I suppose you just have to get used to that. And the best thing that they could do altogether is just ignore it, and completely ignore it. And I mean, if it's getting to the point where they're going to avoid having friends over, well, they need to think about that as well. You know, I mean, how bad is it? It's not the end of the world. It's not as if he's getting a beating or she's getting a beating, or it's not as if there's anything real bad meant by it. It's just the way people are. And sometimes the posh voice thing, that used to always be, I remember when we got the phone into the house first, and my mother would certainly have a posh voice, and would go, hello, this kind of thing, and then you'd say to yourself, oh God, she's mortifying us now.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
We'll move on to our second one then. Dear Phil, I feel like I'm trapped in a lie and I can't escape. Every Sunday I go to Mass with my family. I'm smiling, nodding, pretending to believe. But the truth is, I lost my faith years ago. I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of acting like someone I'm not. And yet I can't stop thinking about how my wife and grown-up children will react if I tell them. They've built their lives around these beliefs, and I'm terrified of shattering their world. I love them dearly, but I also feel like I'm losing myself. Part of me wants to come clean, to finally stop living behind a mask, but the fear of rejection or disappointment keeps me silent. I don't know how to be honest without causing pain, and I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. Every week I sit in the pew, the weight of this secret pressing down, and I wonder if there's a way to be true to myself without losing the people I love most. Interesting one, isn't it?
It is, Fran. I honestly don't understand how he feels that he's going to lose the people he loves the most if he stops going to Mass. I honestly don't understand why this has become a thing.
They sound like a very, dedicated to their religion, a family very...
Yeah, and I respect that, because I think everyone has the right to be dedicated
devout
to some part. But but he seems to... he has lost his faith many years ago, and he's tired of pretending. He's tired of acting like someone he isn't, and he can't stop thinking about how his wife and grown-up children would react if I tell them. I'd say they will not care at all if he tells them that I'm really not interested in going to Mass. I mean, we're talking here about probably a half an hour in someone's week.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why that would even be problematic. But it's equally, I don't understand why he continues to go if it's something he just doesn't like. And I think his adult children are not going to mind at all if he stops going to Mass.
I'm reading between the lines. I'm wondering if he was very devout himself at some point or other, because he says they've built their lives around these beliefs, and I'm terrified of shattering that world. So I'm wondering if he might have been instrumental in them being devout in some way.
But you see, I think, Fran, a lot of younger people make a decision about whether they want to continue going to church or not, and I think that's okay if they decide that. And I don't think that a parent should either be you know, if somebody wants to stop doing something, they should just stop doing it if it upsets them that particularly much. Now, I mean, I understand that religion is very, very important to a lot of people, but it's not going to. You're not going to explode if you don't go to mass. There's times when people just can't get to mass, whether it's because they're in hospital or because, you know, but people can listen to mass. And I mean, I remember having this discussion with my mother recently. Now, she's 88 years of age, and she said she has a little thing she drives around on, one of those wheelchair things. Scooter, And she said it's difficult now for her because when she gets to the church, I think there's 5 or 6 steps. So she'd have to leave her little scooter outside and go up the steps, and then she goes to what was always her pew. Yeah. So it's up the church. And she said, I'm getting a bit shook for this. And I said, you know, ma'am, you can actually listen to mass on the telly. It's on every Sunday on the telly. And she says, not the same. You need to be there. Now, I mean, that's her belief. That's her belief. But she's getting to the point where she's going to have to be brought to mass or helped or make a decision that she can sit in the back seat.
Yeah, it's tough for her, though, isn't it? You know,
it is. Especially when they're that age and they've always had, you know, going to mass is a comfort for her. She likes it. Now, she could be talking the whole way through it as well. Anytime I'm with her anyway, she seems to be, but we have to ignore that as well and just, you know, she's...
Absolutely. So the father in this case then, should he sit down the family and say, look, this is how I feel about this, you know?
I don't even know, Fran, would the kids really care all that much. Like, he seems to have built a thing around it that he's trapped in a lie and he can't escape. You know, he's pretending to believe, and the truth is he lost his faith. So he's tired of pretending, he's tired of acting out like something he's not, and he can't stop thinking about how his wife and grown-up children will react if they tell him. They won't care at all, Fran. They won't care one bit.
So he needs to relax and...
He needs to relax and decide, look, I'm not going to go today, or I will go, but I'm, you know... So, I think he's overthinking it, being honest with you.
All right, to the final letter. I'm kind of sad about this letter because it kind of, there's elements of this that's affecting me as well. But anyway, it says, Dear Phil, since turning 60, I've been consumed by thoughts of death. It came on suddenly, almost like a switch flipped. And now it greets me the moment I open my eyes in the morning. I can't stop thinking about leaving my loved ones behind and stepping into the great unknown. The fear is constant and it overshadows everything else in my life. Part of me worries about the things I've done in the past. My life hasn't been exemplary, and I can't help but feel that I have to pay a price for some of my actions. I love my family dearly, but I feel unworthy and anxious, trapped by regret and fear. How can I come to terms with this anxiety without letting it consume the rest of my life? Well, what do you make of that, Phil?
Sure, look, I feel quite saddened reading it, really, because they're so consumed by the thoughts of dying. And honestly, at 60, I think there's a long way to go. Definitely, I hope to live a lot longer than being in my 60s. But I think the anxiety is something they should go and have a chat maybe with the doctor or something, or the nurse practitioner in their local medical centre, because I think there's a bit of anxiety here, and a little bit of counselling mightn't go astray either, because, you know, he says that my life hasn't been exemplary and I can't help but feel that I may have to pay a price for some of my actions. And, you know, you can't change what you've done in your life, but you can change how you feel about it. And I think if you did have a chat and maybe you have a little bit of counselling, that it would put a lot of his worries at ease. Now, we are all going to die, and there is no doubt about that, but we don't know what happens when we're dead. I think when you're dead, you're just dead. I'm not so sure there's anything after that.
Like Oscar Wilde, I think an exception is going to be made in my case. That's the way I get from day to day, you see.
And you know what? It's an issue, I think, that worries people, or if they get suddenly ill, and it's a serious illness. But people do get cancers and recover from them or manage it, and people do get some people get a very hard life, or they might have, had a lot of illness, or they might just feel debilitated or feel they have a disability of some sort, and it makes their life much more difficult. So I suppose the one thing it's important here is not to make this out to be a minor thing. For this person, they're consumed by thoughts of death. And the fact that it came on so suddenly. So I do think that a bit of counselling wouldn't go astray here. And I think it would definitely maybe change how they feel about death. I don't think it's something to be feared, being honest.
Do you not think, though, that, sometimes it is a particular number, like since turning 60, this guy is saying. So 60 was the trigger, I suppose, for this, Phil.
Well, you see, many years ago, Fred, I think people died much younger than they do now. And we have better health care, we have better means of looking after ourselves, and we have better conditions. We certainly have, better houses, better insulation. We have better food. We have, if you choose to eat the better food and all of that. But I suppose before, there was a lot of people died in their 40s and in their 50s, and the longevity wasn't anything like what we can expect to have today. And there's that. So look, I think this person, if they went and had a chat with a counsellor, or even to go in and have a chat with the doctor, they might find that something, maybe a little bit of an antidepressant of some sort, might work for a while, and they could come off it again. They're not going to get, hooked up on it. But, the fear for this person, they say it's constant and it overshadows everything else. So definitely I think you could do either with a little bit of help, or definitely go and consider having a chat.
Yeah, and here she mentions the word anxiety a couple of times, so it's very real, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and anxiety is something, and you can deal with it and acknowledge it, but it doesn't have to stay with you all the time. But if you're very anxious and you feel you need a little bit of medication, go for it. It's not going to not going to have a negative effect on you. And I think the fact that they can write a letter in, and, maybe they'll find some comfort in the fact that this does happen to most people at different times in their lives, and you can come and it can go, but it does go for a lot of people. Some people continue to be worried and anxious, and you need to ask yourself, what are you worried about most? Because when you're dead, you're dead. You're not going to know anything about it.
Yes. Well, it depends on your interpretation of that. Several people might disagree with you on that and have other opinions, but there you go. That's fine too, isn't it?
Oh gosh, yeah. And I mean, there would be people that say, when you die, you're going to go and you're going to be on another plane, and you're going to be, you're going to be in God's arms, and you're going to be this, and that gives comfort to a lot of people. Yeah, sure, and I respect that. There's absolutely no reason to think any different, and your beliefs are your beliefs. But anxiety is a thing in itself, and sometimes people need a little bit of help with it when they start getting very anxious.
All right, well, great advice as always. If anybody wants to write to Phil, it is tiptoday@tipfm.com, and if you put Dear Phil in the subject line, we will know what you're at. Phil, pleasure. Sorry we're not seeing each other face to face, but lovely to hear you today. Thanks,
and you too, Fran. Take care.
Thanks, now. Phil. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That is our agony aunt, Phil Prendergast, speaking to us from our Clonmel studio this morning. We're here in Nina. We'll take a break. We're back with more in just a tad.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Puckon, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
And you're very welcome back to Tip Today, 1800 938 007. Now we continue our journey through the memories of the Showband era, and many of the musicians from that time are still writing and performing, and my next guest is certainly one of them. Singer-songwriter Shay Fife, originally from the band Lucky Numbers, has just released his single Kiss and Make Up, and I'm delighted to say that Shay is with me here in the Nina studio. Good morning to you, Shay.
Good morning to you, Fran. Thank you for having me.
Good
Appreciate
to see you
being
today.
here.
The moment I mention Lucky Numbers, I'm sure memories will flood back to people.
What I remember basically compared to today, Fran, was travelling the roads. It was a 4-hour trip to Dublin. You were going through every town on the way there, and
no motorways.
No motorways, and things that happened to us in adventures in the north. Like the British government still owed me for a tyre. Like, by the way.
They? Will you tell us about that particular story, will you?
Well, we just barely crossed the border one night. It was pitch black, and a tyre went out on us, and we went back to the road a bit. And one of the spikes, they used to use on the roadblocks,
to
one of the spikes
traffic,
was not fully down. It was up a small bit.
Right.
So we were just sitting there wondering we better start changing the tyre. We heard footsteps coming down a dark road, and this British soldier appeared, cradling a machine gun, right?
Wow.
Now, some of the more naive guys in the band said to me, like, isn't he a very brave man to come down on his own? But we were covered from every angle, probably.
Of course, behind ditches.
Yeah. I knew. So he said to me, what happened, mate? So I said, the tyre blew out because of the thing back the road. He said, okay. He says, up to this looked like a little shed. But we went inside, Fran, the technology in there.
Go on.
Oh, it was serious.
Monitoring everything.
Everything. Parabolic mics, let's say, everything. So I signed this chit, and I was supposed to get refunded by the government.
And you didn't.
Never happened.
So they still owe you
They still owe me for a tyre.
Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
Will you take me back to the origins of Lucky Numbers? Just for people who might know, I always viewed Lucky Numbers as a pop show band. Would that be accurate?
We were never a show band.
Yeah.
No, we never were. Three of us, myself, my brother Larry, and Mick Sheehy, a friend of ours, very good friend of ours, almost a brother actually, we were playing together a band called Abel Kane. And we just decided to form a band. Originally, we went into the country market because Jerry Madigan from the Cotton Mill Boys got onto us, but that really wasn't our market, so we went into the pop band. We ended up with 2 drummers at one stage.
Go on.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. We were in a ballroom once, and this lady upstairs making the tea said, "You're not going to play the 2 of them together, are we?" No. So one's a spare because it breaks down. But we were more of the pop end of things, definitely.
Yeah, but you were experimenting with the whole thing along those years, weren't you?
I suppose we were because we felt that it was our kind of music, and we were never a show band. We were always consider ourselves a group band, if you know what I mean.
And we're talking about the 1980s here, aren't we? The early 1980s.
Yeah, you definitely are. Yeah, I mean, we used to play, and that's like actually how I met the guy I'm working with now, Enda White. He's Enda. We were playing in the National Ballroom in Dublin. Enda just strolled into the dressing room. A Monaghan guy. He's one of those guys. And within 10 minutes, we all felt we knew him all our lives. And he's been a great friend to me ever since. He does all the videos for the stuff. Now he's actually the official video for the record is coming out tomorrow, Wednesday, and that'll be Enda's work.
Fantastic. Yeah.
We refer to him as Cecil B. Demented. He does all that work. That's his thing.
Yeah.
But he's been a magnificent help.
It's amazing the way the technology has developed over the years, hasn't it?
Frightening, friend. I mean, when I think the way we record before, the way compared to what we can do now. Like I work with GarageBand, and I send it to Enda, and he has Pro Tools.
Yeah. This is all software, just for people about to be sure. This is music software.
Software, What can be done?
It's just incredible, isn't it?
It's incredible, just on a computer, the way things can be.
What did you do for your first recordings back in the 80s? Where did you work, or who did you work with?
We used to work in Trend Studios.
Did you? Yeah, in Dublin, yeah.
Yeah, in Dublin, yeah. They were basically all done in Trend, which was a great studio.
Lovely studio. I worked in it many
times.
Even
for the record. Now, the record was originally, the original version was out in 1981, and it was in the Irish charts. Actually, it made the Irish charts. So what we did is we've taken, there again I'm being technical, but stems.
Yes.
string stems now from the original track, and we worked on it from that on. Built it up from there.
It's very good, and we're going to have a listen to it in a little while. Do you often? I can't get over, since we started doing this and looking back on the show bands and stuff, the interest in it is absolutely huge. Does that surprise you?
No, it doesn't, because the amount of people who used to go to the ballrooms, they just didn't vanish.
Yeah,
they still have the interest in. It's a nostalgic thing in a way, I suppose, looking back. But no, it doesn't surprise me that there's still an interest in it at all. In the music.
And do you still find people coming up to you and saying, "I danced to you back in 1980"?
You do, yeah.
You do,
yeah. And people say, I met my wife at your dance, or you get that kind of thing. Not as much lately, but you still get it. You still get it.
Where I saw lucky numbers a lot of times was the Golden Veil in Dundrum, which was such a wonderful gig there, wasn't it?
Great venue.
Yeah.
Absolutely great venue. Actually, even Tipp was always even with the record now. Yourself, Tipp, Larry McLaughlin down the road. He played, and Tipp Midwest.
Yeah.
So
they're playing.
Tipperary town is Tipperary has been good to us. Well, I live in Tipp.
Yeah.
I'm in Newport in County Tipp. So my mother was a Tipp woman. So. There's a connection, I suppose.
Very good indeed. And Newport is gorgeous, of course, as well. And did you continue to play then all the time? When did the band finish up?
We actually finished. We were involved in an accident coming out of Bantry in 1994. And it was a frightening kind of an accident, but we all survived, thanks be to goodness. But after that, we were off the road for a wee while, and it's just hard to reform the same thing. So we just drifted into different things,
Yeah.
I drifted into playing with a guy in bars and, doing weddings and all. And that was the sort of scene I took over in my life then.
Yeah.
That was 1984, that was the year, coming out of Bantry.
My God almighty. So it was a close shave, was it, yeah?
It was. It really was.
So was that a kind of a wake-up call then, for being on the road? No,
I always felt. You always felt a little bit of danger when you headed out at night. Like even the night of the Miami situation.
Yeah, sure.
We were in the north that very night.
Wow.
And we'd come home.
And you got the news.
Oh, mother just called me in the morning and said, "Get up and listen to the news," right? And the sister, it was amazing. The sister went to attempt to go to work 3 times and came back and said, "You're definitely we're not going to the north tonight, are you?" We were due in the north again the night after,
And of course, the business in the north end was killed for quite a while after that.
It was a sea change, Fran. Yeah. It was a sea change for the business because we used to play in the north quite a bit.
Yeah, of course,
yeah. You'd go through towns and people these days would find it hard to understand, blacked out completely.
Yeah.
We broke down one night, actually, outside in Cookstown, in the middle of the street, and I went into the...
Roughly what year are you talking about now?
You'd be talking sometime between 84, 94, maybe 87, maybe that kind of situation.
Yeah, but the Troubles were very much in...
They were, yeah, and we broke down inside. So the only thing I could do was I went into an RUC barracks.
Wow.
To ask them, do they know of any mechanic or anything, and they were very nice.
Were they courteous to you?
They were very courteous, except one thing that made me nervous. There was a guy down the back with a machine gun, and he seemed to be a bit inebriated, let's put it that way.
Oh.
And I said, if a car backfires outside now, I'm going to hit the dirt because he's going to think he's been attacked or something. All little adventures like that,
It's amazing. But bands continued to play up there because, of course, it was lucrative and there was a lot of work up there, as you say.
When you consider the time the sterling
I know.
versus the Irish pound,
you
were talking something like 15%.
What did you make of, people like Bob, who do you call him, out of the Boomtown Rats, giving out about showband musicians and, saying, they were only copying records and stuff like that. And What did you make of that?
We met Bob Geldof in the canteen in RTE one night, and a nicer guy you wouldn't meet. But I think he was in this little bubble.
Yeah.
And he didn't see the kind of music that was being. I mean, there were bands on the road at the time. I mean, the Freshmen,
the standard of the musicians.
The standard was unbelievable. I mean, probably better than the Boomtown Rats, if the truth is known. I mean, we recorded "Proud to be Irish" as a sort of a comeback to his Banana Republic.
Yeah. Right, yeah.
But a nicer guy you wouldn't meet, but I think he was just in that little bubble, and he, which was successful for him. I can't deny that, you know. But I think he was wrong.
Yeah, I think he was wrong too, because as you say, Billy Brown from the Freshmen was one of the most talented people I ever came across.
In my life, I mean, he's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, the harmonies those guys could put together.
Yeah, absolutely. And Errol Gill, Paul Little,
all
wonderful
guys that were there, unbelievable. I mean, we used to relieve before we went formed a band for the band, all the bands, Time Showband and all. Well, I mean, I used to watch the guitar player from the side of the stage. We were doing a song at the time, which I used about 4 chords on. He used about 24. I suddenly said to myself, "An absolute great musicians."
Yeah.
It woke you to the fact that if you were to get into the business, you had to really practice because they were great musicians.
They were top class indeed, and they wanted to earn a wage and a living.
They did, yeah.
That's why they went on the road, yeah.
A lot of them came from groups in Dublin, which were very successful.
Yeah, and jazz backgrounds.
That's it, yeah. But they went into to make money in the bands, and who can blame them?
Well, who can blame them, indeed. Do you often think back on it all yourself? I mean, is it something you go back to in your own head?
It's almost like a line from a song I was trying to write years ago. Like, your past is like Atlantis, lost and gone forever, lost beneath the swirling seas of time. Yeah. And that, in a way, that's what it seems like. There was someone else living back there than me,
Does it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean, all the things. I mean, you must remember from your own days for a friend. It must seem like it was another guy doing it at times,
You hit the nail on the head, because I often think back to some of the stuff we did and where we went and stuff. And it's somebody else.
There was a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, a guy called Germini. He used to go and see the birds. He'd tell me about the birds all the time, I mean, and they were a very successful band,
Yeah, it did very well for a few years. But my psychiatrist said I'll be fine after a while more. But there you go. Was there a highlight along the way for you? Was there something that sticks out as being a...
What was very good for us at the time was, believe it or not, was going to England. The English, I mean... You'd be in the National Ballroom on a Saturday night,
Kilburn,
with 2,200 people, And
it's incredible, wasn't it?
It was, but for the young diaspora, it was they'd be out talking to us in the wagon after, and they'd say, "We'd love to go home with you right now." There was young kids over there,
and this was the 80s, of course, so
there was
nothing for them.
Nothing for them here, and they were over in England, and they didn't want to be there. They would have given anything to be home, but that was the financial situation. They couldn't be,
It's very sad, isn't it?
Very sad. It was very sad. It was very sad to see,
And earlier again, I remember Margot talking about meeting particularly the single fellas who went over there and they took to the old drink and, they were living in very unfortunate situations. Yeah. A lot of it was sad like that.
Very sad. Very sad. I mean, the diaspora, what they had to go through, and from what I've heard and talking to guys is, they talk about being treated badly, but they were treated badly by their own people a lot of the time.
Yeah. I heard that time and time again.
The
foremen, when they were Irish, they were tougher on them then.
The foreman was an Irish guy, and no mercy for the guys, They didn't get an easy life, I mean, you wouldn't blame them to cut loose on the weekend, really. And I suppose the booze was a release.
Wasn't it just? And of course they were paid in the pubs as well. So they were given their money in the pubs. So what else?
It was all set up, wasn't it?
So tell me about Kiss and Make Up then. You said this was originally a Lucky Numbers track, but you've kind of reimagined it in some way, haven't you?
We've kept completely to the same arrangement. But just, it's a modern recording. I like to think it's a better recording because we spend a lot of time on it,
Of course, yeah. And you have a video coming out?
The official video, Enda tells me he's bringing it out tomorrow.
Very good indeed. Where can people access your music and the videos and all of this?
Well, the video is going up on Facebook, and anyone can see it there.
Under your own name?
Yes.
Okay.
And the records is sent, Deborah Dowling, who sends it out to all the stations. So all the stations should have it if people want to request it or have a listen to it. So that's the way it is.
Very good. Well, we're going to have a listen to it now. What are the plans? Have you other plans for more music coming up, Shay?
Well, in this business, friend, the saying I have is, you're one song away from the money. It's another song I was trying to write. But you keep hoping that you'll throw mud against the wall and some of it'll stick and something will happen. You never know.
All right. Well,
but it's a hobby and it's keeping me going at the minute.
Yes, okay. Well, I think this is very good and it's a great production and sounds terrific. We're going to have a listen to it now. Shay, pleasure. And thank you so much.
And Fran, thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome indeed. Let's have a listen to this. This is called Kiss and Make Up.
Kiss you goodnight. I can remember a time it used to be me. That was before the night you set me free. Now the mood is out and stars, they shine so bright. Oh, how I wish we were still in love tonight. Let's kiss and make up. We're not happy apart. Let's kiss and make up the night you left. You know you took away a piece of my heart. Let's kiss and make up. I'm still in love. Kiss and make up. We're not happy apart. Let's kiss and make up the night you left. You know you took away a piece of my heart. Let's kiss and make up. I'm still in love. Still in love. Still in love. Still in
Yeah, I really like that. That's Shay Fife. It's called Kiss and Make Up, and Shay, formerly of Lucky Numbers. 1800 938 007.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie. Tip Today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. slatterysgarage.ie.
Yeah, lovely message for Shay Fife. A listener said, I met my husband in the Rag in 1987. Our first dance was to Lucky Numbers. They were just fantastic. We're almost 40 years together. And great to hear the stories from the past. Well done, says Mary to us. Mary, that's a lovely story, and I'll pass that on to Shay. And thanks very much indeed for getting in touch with us. Now, last week we spoke about the UN-backed 2026 World Happiest Country report, and it's sparked a huge reaction on the show, with many of you getting in touch to share what is really angering you about life in Ireland at the moment. But this week, we want to know what it is about Ireland that you love. What is it that makes you want to stay here in the country of a thousand welcomes? Well, Donal joins me now. Good morning to you, Donal.
Good morning, Fran, and good morning to your listeners.
And lovely to hear you again, Donal. Before I ask you about what you like about Ireland, what did you make of that World Happiest Country report and us being at number 13 there? What did you make of that?
Well, it's a bit like all surveys, Fran. I often do wonder about these things in times when I have nothing else to wonder about, put it that way. I wonder if there's a touch of the yes ministers about this. If you ask the right questions, you get the right answers.
Right, okay.
It's not that I'm cynical now or anything like that.
Not a bit. Sure, we know full well that you're not a cynic, Donald. Yes, indeed. But it is a legitimate. I mean, I've said this a few times. I thought this was kind of some sort of a magazine type of harmless kind of report. But I mean, this is an Oxford Wellbeing Research Centre report, so this is the real deal.
Well, that's all. Indeed, sounds very posh. But we've sort of featured a bit down the list of it. The Scandinavian countries seem to figure at the top.
Yeah.
Which is probably not surprising because they have a high standard of living and good health services and all the rest of it, although they're under pressure at the moment because of their immigration policy,
sure,
that way.
Yeah.
And like people I know that live in Sweden will say that this has changed to unrecognisable levels in the past number of years, unfortunately.
For sure. And Denmark, I know at the moment, they're number 3 in the happiest report, and they're trying to deal with immigration. They have a pretty much left-wing government, but with right-wing policies on immigration, so they're trying to do something about it. But we're below Israel. What do you make of that?
Well, I say no, Mr. Netanyahu's policies are not exactly helping Israel to be happy. Would you think, Fran? I find that a little bit incredible, to be honest, that we'll be down to this that far.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. I mean, you alluded to it yourself there. You know, what questions did they ask? But seemingly it's a personal sort of a thing. They asked about 1,000 people, I think, per country, and it's sort of a personal thing in terms of, you know, your current state of well-being. That's what they asked. So,
well, you see,
yeah,
the concept of happiness actually comes from within. We can't. Outside influences can't make us happy per se, but they can help, all right. Say, good job, good economy, good prospects.
Yeah, winning the lotto,
all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Well, that would help probably quite significantly, but I say there's about as much chances of winning the lotto now as actually being involved in any of these surveys.
Can I ask you now, if you were to answer that question about your current state of well-being, what would you say to me?
I consider myself basically a very happy person, to be honest.
Yeah.
Now, there's all sorts of challenges that come at you in life, like the economy, health, relationships, all these sort of things. They all sort of impinge on that. I consider happiness a bit like a radio frequency. say you broadcast there from Clonmel, Frank, on a particular frequency, and if some other fella down the road to set up another transmitter on an almost similar frequency, you get interference.
Yes.
But it's the same with happiness. Like, outside influences can cause interference to it, but they can't necessarily undermine it, if you know what I mean.
That's very interesting. Well, they can't undermine it if you have a healthy mind and if you can sort of stave it off in some way. But some people aren't quite so lucky, and they might be prone to being, I don't know, anxious and, you know.
Well, outside influences can cause anxiety. That's for sure. Like, say, events that take place in the country, crime, if you're a victim of an assault, whatever. All these things, they don't help, and they can have their own particular influences and effects. But your basic happiness still comes from within yourself.
And in your own case, whenever you and I speak, sometimes we speak about, you know, fairly kind of difficult topics, but you always come across as if you have a sense of humour and tongue in cheek and all of that kind of thing.
Go away, Frank, never.
where did you get that from? Like, was that your upbringing, do you think? Was it a happy upbringing? This
is always a happy household, put it that way.
Yeah.
For sure. But I think your upbringing has a lot to do with it, what you experience when you're younger.
Yeah.
And if you experience happy vibes when you're younger, you sort of bring that with you through life. And it's a good thing to have, because it helps to beat off the opposition, if you like, in the forms of all the other things that come at you. Because if you, put it this way, if you lie down and give up, well, you're done for anyway. So you might as well stand and fight. And the old Tipperary saying, no surrender.
No surrender, indeed. But is that not why this report, no matter how academic it is kind of dodgy? Because if you're asking people about their current state of well-being, it's a very personal thing. It's not necessarily going to indicate a general happiness around the country.
Quite so, because it could be very subjective. Like, you know, it depends
absolutely.
on which subset of the population the 1,000 people came from.
Yeah.
You know, if it was, say, all taken in Dunleer or something like that, where they all have pots of money and all the rest of it, and they might be a bit happier than, say, somewhere in Darndale, put it that way.
Yeah, but I presume, because it's Gallup poll and stuff, it would have to be weighted, and, you know, various demographics would have to be included in it. So, you know.
One assumes that there would be some sort of scientific basis to it, all right, but then again, you never know. I could go back to the Yes Minister file again.
You're very fond of that, aren't you?
I think it's one of the best series ever created on television, you know, and very politically adept, shall we say, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting though that it's interesting that you bring up comedy, and I was only talking about this at home recently. I never watch comedy, even though I always appreciate comics, and you know, but I never watch comedy. I normally end up watching kind of miserable stuff when I sit down. We should be watching more comedy, and shouldn't we? Just to cheer us up a little bit or something.
You see, the thing is though, at the moment, that with the possible exception of one certain program in RTE, there doesn't seem to be any serialized comedy like there used to be. I mean, the BBC used to be great at it, but at the moment they have nothing.
Well, that's because the whole woke thing, you see, has sort of watered down, I suppose, comedy, and they have to be all so careful and tread softly and all of that.
This isn't proved in that the woke docs are a bit dry and morose, really, when it comes down to it, you know.
How many people have we just insulted there now, I wonder?
Friend, I wouldn't dream. But you
I mean, when you talk about comedy, I mean, immediately you went back to Yes Minister, which was back in the 1970s and 80s, I suppose. And, you know, if we look at Faulty Towers from the 1970s, and even Father Ted, if you like that was back to the 90s.
Well, Father Ted was a classic, like, you know. Yeah. And I can guarantee you one thing, Fred, having Dermot Morgan, shall we say, as creative and all as he was, he's only telling half the story. I put it that way.
Do you think?
He went the full hog on it. I think so. Absolutely, 100%, without a doubt.
Do you know, I wonder, did priests like prepare for that every week and watch it, or did they try and ignore it? I wonder.
Well, it did become the subject of some sermons at the time. All right, I do believe I do remember that, hearing that from around the country. Yes. Dermot Morgan, Fire and Brimstone and all the rest of it. But then a lot of other clergy took it tongue in cheek, like, you know, because he was actually very creative and very funny.
Well, there's all Graham Linehan's genius, I suppose, where that is concerned. And God knows he's in hot water now with the woke brigade as well. But there you go.
Well, strange to say that, like, you know, but the humour seems to upset them quite a bit, doesn't
it? You're back to that again, are you?
Oh, me never, Frank. Tut. Oh,
yeah.
I shudder to think.
Yeah.
But you know, you think of all those old series, as in Yes Minister, and don't forget Patricia Rutledge, I beg your pardon.
Oh yes,
Keeping Up Appearances.
Keeping Up Appearances. What a wonderful series, yeah.
I mean, talk about the telephone voice, like, you know.
Brilliant, yeah, just brilliant. Wasn't she absolutely amazing? Yeah,
pure classic.
Yeah. It's interesting, yeah. I think you might have sparked a conversation. I'm just looking at my screen here now. You might have sparked another conversation about comedies of the past, and maybe that's something we're going to have to go into. I love.
Oh, I'd say you could fill an entire week with stuff like that, because like there's so much material out there, and it's part of people's past now at the moment, because that's just unfortunately the way it is.
What was the one with Victor Meldrew in it? I don't believe
One Foot in the Grave.
1 foot in the grave. Oh, well done you. Well done you. What a wonderful, wonderful series that was as well. As usual, you started yet another conversation on the show. But look,
I hope we didn't start any controversy now, Frank. Probably it's me to do such a thing.
You were good as gold today. Leanne tells me you're going to get a gold star for your performance today. Look after yourself, Donald.
Tell her to mind that foot, okay?
I will indeed. Look, my left foot. Bye-bye to you now. That's Donald speaking to us there. That's it from me. Leanne produced. Stephen has the Time Tunnel on the lunchtime show, and we'll talk to you tomorrow from our Clonmel studio, indeed. Look after yourselves, won't you? Bye-bye.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.